Hello, in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to talk about conversation-based adaptive instructional system, specifically talk about advantages and disadvantages from AI and ethics perspective. I'm Xiangen Hu. I'm from the University of Memphis and also affiliated with Central China Normal University. These are 6 points that I want to briefly talk about. First, I'm going to talk about background. The first background I want to talk about is adaptive instructional system, what they are. Well, adaptive instructional system, including a lot of things that we have to see every day in our higher education, elementary schools, and then workforce training. There are intelligent tutoring system, which is a larger category, and recommender systems, and the intelligent media. I want to specifically emphasize AIS is actually a technological foundation for advanced personalized learning. This leads me to talk about second background, which is National Academy of Engineering, the great challenges for the century. One of the challenges is advanced personalized learning. Now, just give you a perspective of those challenges. There are 14 of them. Advanced personalized learning is one of them, and then others, if you do want to compare, the other one would be something like reverse engineer of the brain. The third piece of background I want to mention here is tutoring system, human tutoring system. In the human tutoring system, as been documented, it's mostly efficient and effective way of people learn and teach. And then Bloom's Two Sigma problem, probably everybody know that human actually achieve the most effective, efficient teaching in education. This observation of efficient and effective human tutoring pointing to a very clear goal to generations of learning scientists. We want to create machines that actually mimic human and then teach students like human tutor would. In 20 years after Bloom's report about the Two Sigma problem, there are a lot of work has been done. This actually reported in 20 years later after 84 paper that intelligent tutoring system actually did very well. This is a list of landmark systems that I actually reported earlier, and also I added something from most recent. For example, one of the applications we do, AutoTutor, is actually developed since 2001 to present time. The successes and achievements of ITS, Intelligent Tutoring System, in the first 20 years and later has been very encouraging. So IEEE established an adaptive instructional system standard committee about 2 years ago, and also most recently a team of my colleagues had organized the IEEE AIS consortium, which actually pushing the adoption of AIS in education, in training to the next level. To summarize, AIS is in fact the frontiers of learning theory and technology has been identified by National Academy of Engineering as the challenge of the century. And learning scientists know how to make it happen. And then now IEEE have the standards committee actually making it approaching maturity. To summarize, the backgrounds, the important progress made and nature of the challenges understood. Now, I'm going to talk about conversation-based adaptive instructional system. Specifically, I'm going to talk about the research and development that we have done about conversational-based AIS at the University of Memphis. We have seen this picture. This is actually says that human tutor does best when converse with students using natural language. To create a conversation-based tutoring system or adaptive instructional system is actually theory-driven. First, the researcher and the developer need to know how people learn. Those are 2 books. Actually, you can find a lot of information about how people learn. And also, understand how teachers teach. Here is information that you can get from APA about how people teach and learn. The most efficient, effective teachers actually following some learning principles. This 25 learning principles that my colleague Art Gracer summarized in Journal of Educational Psychology. Now, those 25 principles, I do not have time to go through every single one of them, but the one that actually most relevant to conversation-based tutoring systems are asking deep questions. There are multiple ways of asking questions, and then they're actually categorized. So those are 16 different type of questions that you would classify, and they are also further classified by three categories: shallow, intermediate, and deep questions. By examining how human tutor and the student interact, and the researcher at the University of Memphis many years ago summarized a very simple ways characterize the interaction. We call the expectation misconception tailored dialogue. Then the expectation misconception tailored dialogue being implemented in computer systems. That's where we have the auto tutor system. Auto tutor system has been developed in the last 20 plus years, and then there are a lot of applications. This is a table, and actually I can give you references later. This is the table you can find how AutoTutor developed. So this is about more than 10 years ago. There's a system that actually developed at the University of Memphis. And this is 5 years ago, University of Memphis, we in our lab developed this. And this is currently running. We have systems for statistics, electronics, critical thinking, and then adult literacy. And then currently in the lab, we're trying to explore all the possible interfaces using Talking Ed as interface for conversation-based tutoring system. And most recently, we are working on the intelligent tutoring systems, conversation-based AIS, that is capable of self-improving, that can co-teach with human, and also with capability of team tutoring. By now, you can tell that I'm excited about conversation-based adaptive instructional system. So next, I'm going to talk about advantages of CBAIS. Based on my experience of research, development, and implement adaptive instructional system, especially conversation-based tutoring system, or AIS, advantages, you can get started very easily. Remember, you mimic how humans converse with students. So it's very easy to start and reach certain levels of efficacy. So AutoTutor, which is highlighted over here, are produced by us at the University of Memphis. We reach decent level of learning gains. A long time ago, we actually compared AutoTutor, conversation-based tutoring system, with skilled human tutor. We find out AutoTutor, the system that we built, actually can be comparable to a good human tutor. If we think about what actually is the reason that for the observed advantage of tutoring system, conversation-based tutoring system, that is comparable with human, I think it's due to this verbal interaction that mimic human interaction, flexible and personal. Now, the most recent technological development actually making this advantage very likely be more prominent, which is verbal reasoning in the backend. And those at 10 or 12, 10, 15 years ago, we do not have strong AI or strong technology in AI and big data. Now we actually have this verbal reasoning in the backend or back in the at the server level. So we actually have rooms to make system that is adaptive and also additive. Here I talk about self-improving and also dynamic. I want to emphasize the second key element. It's primarily technological to start, but actually there are more that are theoretical. I do not have time to cover that. I would like to bring those two highlight points to your attention. One is verbal learning or verbal natural language interaction that is flexible and personal. The other one is adaptivity that actually enabled by AI and big data. Now, those two things actually help to reduce achievement gap that have been observed for many years in US education. Just to elaborate issues, achievement gaps. So for many years, it has been observed that African American students and white students in US educational system, they actually have different grades for STEM related areas like mathematics. This was a study that I did looking at it on technology that helped reducing achievement gaps for college students in the behavior statistics. Now, this is not a conversational-based tutoring system, it's ITS in general, but this will actually show the potential of technology to reduce achievement gap. Three things worth mentioning about advantages of conversational-based AIS. First, it's relatively easy to create. Second, it is flexible, personal, adaptive because it's maybe human tutors. Third one, this technology may have a potential of solving the issues of academic achievement gaps between different ethnic groups. In the next few slides, I want to list a few you may call the disadvantage of conversation-based AIS, or you can call the limitations or weakness of conversation-based AIS. The first observation of disadvantage, limitation, or weakness of conversation-based tutoring systems or AIS, they all unique combination of learning theories, selected learning theories, technologies, and content domains. Because they're unique combination, those applications or methodology is not systematic. So some of the applications are not yet available for some of the domains or disciplines. The first limitation is primarily technological. Some of the language, such as English, are more advanced in computational linguistics. Therefore, they can take people speaking English may take full advantage of the system, but it's not necessarily true for other languages. Another disadvantage or limitation for technology is not really technology itself, it's more societal. For example, advanced technology may not be available equally to different age groups or socioeconomic status groups, etc. So that applicability and acceptability may be different among those groups. The third limitation or weakness that are due to technological issues is the availability of data. So when we use AI needs to be trained with existing data. As we know, availability of data are different from different domain or discipline, different cultural or different language. All those technological limitations actually really bring the attention to us, basically pointing to the following fact, that the conversation-based AIS may not be ready for large-scale adoption in the educational system because they're simply not ready. We are not ready for large-scale adoption. If we do, we will face ethic issues. In the next few minutes, I'm going to point out a few critical issues of conversational-based AIS that we actually need to consider now. I'm going to highlight the critical issues based on this picture that I'm presenting here. As we showed before, we actually consider this curve as an advantage because it can easily or producing a system that it actually can work. But if you look at this one, there are several stages. The first stage is R&D. So we actually need to do research and development and evaluation and then identify the best strategy or best ways of producing effective of learning content, like a conversation-based tutoring system. And after that, we're going to do adoption in the educational system. So those two stages, those development stages of our system. The question is, where and why should be this? Where do we think that we're ready to make the system available for students to interact? And then those are very, very important issues, may face some very, very serious ethic consequences. I just want to elaborate this a little bit more. The question is, are we ready to let students work on less efficient, effective systems like conversational-based tutoring system? We certainly not. Now, when are we ready? Is there a clinical trial in place that actually identify potential harm for some of the systems? Now, I'm going to elaborate potential harm in the next slides, but this is a question very, very critical. But we do not have this in place. It's not the same as we have for life sciences. There might be other potential harm you can think of, but here I just give you an example. So if we allow AI to teach students value or moral standards, what would be the long-term psychological well-being of the students? That's something that, as a psychologist, I do care a lot. So we need to ask this question, should this be an issue? If it is, I think it will be an issue. What would be the best proper proportion of artificial cognition and human cognition in the educational system? So we work together with conversation-based tutoring systems, human and the computer work together. Now, I want to bring you this slide actually due to one of our colleagues, George Simmons. About 2 years ago, we actually had one conference that specifically discussed human cognition and artificial cognition, how those two systems work together. Some of the keynote speakers that you have today were part of that discussion 2 years ago. There are 3 take-home messages for the critical issues that I have talked about in the last 2 minutes. First, need to establish a clinical trial for systematically evaluate the learning resources. Second one is identify potential harm when abuse learning resources. And third one is start to draw boundaries between AC and the HC applications in all learning environments. Now I'm going to spend a half a minute to summarize what I have talked about in the last 20 minutes. In the last 20 minutes, I have hopefully convinced you that significant progress has been made in conversational-based adaptive instructional system. Now it's time to get real. And we need to point out that all the applications that we have observed, efficient and effective, they were highly theory, technology, and domain specific, and not yet for large-scale adoption. And also there are numerous technology limitations that potentially create digital divide as a function of domains or discipline, socioeconomic status, and age. One urgent issue that I pointed out, which is I feel very strong, is implementing clinical trials in the R&D stage to identify potential harm of learning resources, and that will avoid a potential long-term psychological well-being of the students. In the last 20 minutes, I only focused on conversation-based adaptive instructional systems or adaptive instructional systems for their ethic issues, advantages, disadvantages. But I do recommend you to watch some of the videos that are produced by other scholars that identify some general issues about AI, ethic issues in AI. So this is the YouTube movie that I recommend you to watch. Thank you very much. And here is the contact information that you can reach me through email. I am from the University of Memphis, affiliated with Central China Normal University. You can send me through the emails of those universities or Gmail. Thank you.